Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you today to our first public event on the African continent. My name is Joanna Kenga, and I'm the Outreach and Event Coordinator for Black Girls Gather. Today, we're gathered to reflect on the place of our book club within the development of art and social engagement on the African continent and the diaspora. Black Girls Gather is a new program initiated by the West Island Black Community Association in Montreal, Quebec. It consists of a group of young women meeting every week and discussing readings done from predetermined list of books featuring Black authors mainly. The activities of the club will include reading discussions, movie screenings, creative writing workshops, poetry workshops, visit from special guests, and art session, all revolving around the books that we study. The purpose of this project will be to expose young Black girls to Black literature and engage in discussions around themes such as coming of age, racism, discrimination, identity, feminism, love, family, friendship, etc. All while building a network of support, mentorship, and sisterhood for girls coming from the Black community in Montreal. At the agenda today, we have the word of welcome, of course. Then we will take the time to acknowledge the territory on which we sit right now in Montreal. And we will continue with introducing our panelists, our guests today. And we will finish with some closing remarks. So for the acknowledgement of territory, we have as Montrealers to acknowledge and recognize that and respect the Kanikani nations as the custodians of the land and waters on which we meet today. Tiatiake, also known much in Montreal, is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Joining me today are the members of our executive committee. We have Mariam Touré, the co-founder and co-coordinator of the book club, Fabiola Gamale, co-founder and co-coordinator of the book club as well. And we have Sam, who is the assistant coordinator. Hi, ladies. I think you all want to say a word today. I think it's the first time that you are getting so far in the continent. I think it's our first time in Kigali.
Yes. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you to the festival for letting us come and speak about our amazing project.
Yes, well, I'm just going to reiterate what Fabiola said, but yes, this is our first event on the African continent, so happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yes, literally what everyone said as well. Thank you for having us, and as Arandis, I'm really happy that this is happening in Kigali, so anyway.
So I think we can begin our journey, ladies. So concerning the origins and objective of Black Girls Gather, how would you describe, Fabiola, Black Girls Gather, and why would you say it was important to start it?
So Black Girls Gather is a space where young Black women can gather and discuss about not only the books that we read and the themes that we discuss in those books, but the personal experiences that they face. And they can do so in a space where we will accept them, we will understand what they've gone through because we have gone through it ourselves, and we won't judge. This is an important space for young Black women because in the society that we live in, they're often cast aside and they're often not acknowledged. They're sometimes and oftentimes told that they're not enough. Well, in this space that we created, it's important that we center them and tell them, you are enough, you are loved, and we are here to listen to you.
That's important. And Mariam, well, how would you say, as an executive, how would you say, what was the reason to create Black Girls Gather? As a co-founder, why was it also for you so important?
I think there were so many aspects that came into us having this initial idea, but one of the biggest parts was the fact that myself and Fabiola went to a predominantly white high school when we were kids, and we didn't feel represented in the curriculum, the books we read, the history we studied, and we definitely didn't feel represented in the groups that we were part of. So we never had that feeling that we were confident in our Black skin, that we could put forward our identity as a Black person and be proud of it and be confident with it. So starting the book club, well, we were also like big fans of literature and reading. So that was an aspect we wanted to put forward. But it was really the idea of creating a space, a sisterhood where Black girls could gather, because there had never been a program like this where we were allowed like to be together and we could read books together and we could honestly talk about our experience, because it had never been seen before. So to be able to create something that would have helped us when we were kids, that was, I think, the most important part. And just the sisterhood, the fact that you can count on someone, you can have those Black girls that have gone through the same thing as you and who will completely understand you and not judge you for your answers or for what you've been through. That's really comforting.
And what about you, Sam? What would you say was the reason? What pushed you to join the book club?
I think, just as everyone is saying, I think the lack of representation as Black people who exist here in the global North, one of the histories that we share is a lack of seeing one another, and also being young Black people not being able to read the books we want to read because our curriculum in school is so white-centered and there's no Black authors that are presented. So joining this book club, when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is something that my younger self would have loved. But also myself right now, I have enjoyed every discussion book I've been part of. It's with younger Black girls, but I'm just as there and I'm being as nourished as every girl in the group as well.
Awesome. So we'll move to the impact of the initiative in the African diaspora. We'll move to the second part of our panel. How would you, Mariam, how would you make the link between the diaspora and artists on the African continent? Why would you say it is relevant?
I think it's a difficult question, but I think when it comes to, I guess, the book club, one thing that I was very proud of and that I noticed from the start is the diversity from where everyone comes from. So we're not all people who are necessarily born in Quebec and raised here. We have people who come from countries all over Africa, who come from countries all over the Caribbean, who sometimes come from the United States. So we all have very diverse experiences. And I think that brings like a really important aspect to the book club. And I think that's something we also wanted to reflect in the books that we were reading. So let's say the authors that we were presenting in the books that we were reading this year or in the workshops we were having, we always wanted to make sure that people remembered where they came from when they were reading the books that we chose. So, you know, a lot of us grew up here. I know for myself, my parents are from Guinea, but I was born here. I grew up here. Montreal is really all I know. But through the books I was reading and through discussions with other girls who come from other places, I'm able to see how their experience is, where they grew up, what they know about their history. And it's so important, because all that we know about our history, all that we know from where we come from is what our parents have told us. Like Sam said, it's not something that we study in school. It's not something that we study in history class. So it's so important for us to try to build that sense of attachment to the African diaspora, trying to find our roots, trying to understand where we come from. And I feel like literature is really the best way to do that, especially with the amazing authors and female Black authors that we have here today.
That's interesting. I was just about to ask, what would you say about the book club encourages the interest of of the participant when it comes to the continent. Do you think there is a new form of interest because of the book club? I'll go with Fabiola on this one.
I do, because, you know, when the girls who are sitting in their classrooms reading books only about, you know, the history of Quebec or the history of Canada are able to be open to something that they share that is part of their culture, even though it may be far away, they become interested in it. You know, we've heard from many accounts from the young girls that, you know, I learned more about my culture. I learned more about, you know, my ancestors because of the books that we read, you know? And so, you know, presenting authors that are from Africa, presenting authors that are from the various different countries and the various different cultures in Africa, the girls are able to have this renewed sense of link to the continent and this renewed sense of desire to learn more about it. And so that's why I think it's really important. This initiative is really important. That's why I think that it really contributes to, you know, people who are here developing a link to the continent and the countries that are there.
So I want to go with you, Sam, on this one. How would you say how has the book club increased your sense of self?
I think that for me, the book club has made me feel more empowered as a Black person, as an African diaspora, being able to read stories from people that I admire, from Black women, Black African women that I admire, has really taught me the power that we as Black folks have, and that our stories matter and they have to be told. I think, as I'd said before, anyone has been saying, I think lack of representation creates a sense of isolation and self-hatred sometimes, but being able to like see yourself represented in a book, especially as an immigrant, being told, hey, your story matters. You're not the only one who feels isolated. Like, these are stories that people have written and they have made me feel empowered. Yeah.
This is a question that will go to each and every one of you. Actually, Mariam, how would you say the book club has increased your sense of self?
Yeah, I think maybe one aspect we didn't necessarily talk about, but that we've definitely noticed in the books that we've read is how like the books that we chose that are written by African authors. And right now I'm thinking of Americana, I'm thinking of Buried Beneath the Baobab Tree, I'm thinking of Aya de Yupougon. So all these, Children of Blood and Bone also. So all these books really presented, I guess, a different narrative of the African experience or of the African diaspora. I mean, again, what we learn in school is nothing. What we learn from our parents is, I guess, really unique to their experience, and we can't always understand it. But when it's in books, and especially in fantasy novels, you'll see that an African country, I know in Children of Blood and Bones, they took Nigeria and they presented it as this kingdom, and they built like a whole storyline around it. And it really teaches you to love your country. I don't come from Nigeria, but through that book, I know I learned to love this country. And I know that many other girls loved it too. So it's really nice to see, I guess, where we come from and our origins be represented in such a beautiful way, and in a way that like you can see yourself in the story. Like you can see yourself as the lead of the story, going on all these amazing adventures and doing all these great things. And like Sam said, it's so empowering. And for me, really to see the impact on the girls, to see how much they appreciate these stories and how, I guess, they look at the stories and they look at their own lives and they can make the parallels. It's super interesting and I guess really rewarding to see in general.
That's interesting. And would you say, Fabiola, that it kind of increased your knowledge of the African diaspora and your kind of sense of belonging to the wider Black community in general?
Oh, absolutely. You know, reading these various books and these various genres written by African author, you learn to feel connected, you know, you feel like you belong, you know. And certainly in here in Canada and in Montreal, where Black people are often cast to the side and victims of structural inequalities, when you read these books where everybody is the same, everybody looks the same, you know, there isn't that contest of or that these structural inequalities and these questions of power regarding race. You know, that's when you feel connected and you feel this desire to even be there. You know, to live in that world because of the way you of the annexation that you feel here. Um, I think that the books that we've read and the African authors that we got to encounter, not only for us, but for the girls, like I said, created this link and this connection to the continent and to the countries, to the people, to the culture. You know, the girls, sometimes in the book, the authors would use words from the various different dialects and languages in Africa. And, you know, just that little connection and that little piece of culture, you already feel connected. And so I think it was really important to show that to the girls and for us as well, book club executive members.
Awesome, ladies. So let's move on to our next round of questions, which is the literature, arts, and the culture in the African diaspora. This question will be for each and every one of you, but I think Mariam can start. How would you say that the initiative itself inscribe itself within the cultural movement currently happening within the African diaspora? How would you, where is the link, would you say, and what's the place of the initiative within that movement?
I think, well, first of all, just the mission of our book club, empowering young Black women, that touches upon so many initiatives that are going on the African continent, wanting either to increase access to education for Black girls or just empowering them in general. But when it comes to, I guess, the cultural aspect, I look really, one, at the literature that we put forward. So when we pick our books every year, and we're going into our second year now, we want to make sure that not only we're presenting a diversity of authors, of Black female authors, so that come from all over the world, that speak or write in French and English, but also that talk about different things. So we don't always want to hear about like racism and discrimination. We want to hear about stories of success and amazing things that Black girls and Black women are doing. So I think that's an aspect of it, the literature and putting forward stories that strengthen Black culture and not victimize it. And then the other aspect, which I guess I'll let the others talk about a bit more, but it's definitely our workshops. So in the selection of workshops that we chose this year, we wanted to make sure that we increase the attachment that Black girls have to Black culture, and that it would allow them to build this sense of identity and like they'd feel a bit more like they belong, and that you don't have to question if you're Black enough, or that like, oh, you're considered white because you don't come from where your parents come from, or that like you don't feel so attached to where you come from. We wanted to make sure they felt confident in their skin and in their culture. So the workshops was the biggest aspect of that.
And what about you, Fabiola? What would you how would you make that link?
I think Mariam put it so beautifully when she referenced the workshops. We had one specific workshop that I think really fits into what we meant when we say we want to connect the girls to the continent. Whether it was essentially the step dancing workshop that we had. You know, step dancing not only is something that is very present in American universities, but it has a long history that dates back all the way to Africa. And the girls having to experience that dance and having to perform that dance, but also learning the history of it was really important. And from that workshop and the lessons that they've learned, they've gotten to understand more of they've gotten to understand the culture that is present on the continent and the everything that they do there. And so I think it was really important for us to present it in that way and to continue on doing so in the future years of the book club, because at the end of the day, it's all in the name of connecting the girls and showing them that we are not only here, but we're everywhere. The diaspora is very wide and on the continent as well.
Awesome. And what about you, Sam? How would it be for you?
I think that for me, this is a really great question. Most of the history that has been written about Africa and Africans has been historically written by white people ever since colonialism. And right now we're seeing a reclamation of what it means to be an African, of Black people globally reclaiming who they are. We're seeing that from African Americans going back to Africa, to Ghana, to kind of understand their roots. And us being able to provide these books to girls, young girls, to read about Black history, to read about African history from African authors is a beautiful thing to witness, to just see themselves being represented in a way that's celebratory, not in a way that's diminishing in any way. So I think that's the way we're doing it. We're doing it by reclaiming who we are and reclaiming our history.
I don't know if I could add something.
Go ahead, Maya.
But I think also the aspect that the intergenerational mentoring that maybe we haven't talked about, but I mean, coming from the African continent, coming from the African diaspora in general, we have big families usually. So you'll hear stories from your grandparents and from your parents and from your cousins. And I guess it's always things that are passed down and passed down and passed down until it reaches you. And I guess that's something we aspire to do with the book club itself. Like right now, we're on our committee, we're 8 young Black young women in our 20s. And the girls that we mentor, well, they're in their teens, so 12 to 18 years old. But eventually, once we grow older and we move on to other things, we always want this book club to be youth-led. We always want Black young women to be running this and to be sharing their stories and mentoring other young Black girls. And hopefully in 10 and 20, 30 years, it'll become this whole network of Black women across the world, all over the African diaspora, that'll be able to say, well, I started at Black Girls Gather and I was part of this movement. And yeah, it's like a culture that we want to start here.
That's awesome. So moving on to the final part of our panel, which is empowering girls and women across the African diaspora. How would you say, ladies, that the book club contributes to the empowerment of young girls and women and Black women within the Black community, within society in general? What is the place of the initiative?
Well, like I said in the beginning, this is a safe space for young Black women, and in this space, we allow them to speak their truth, to say their experiences without any judgment, and that contributes to empowering them. That contributes to building up their self-esteem, building up this link that we have between us, so that then they can go out into the world and know that whatever anybody else tells them, they're on stable ground, stable structure, because we gave them the opportunity to just let go, let go of the fears, let go of the insecurities, of the comments that they hear all around, whether in school, at work, with their family. This is the space where they can just let go. And by letting go, by shedding all of that weight, they're able to then move on into the world and know that, yeah, I'm here, I'm enough, I've gone through it and I'm okay. And that is really what we aim to do. I think we achieved it pretty well during this first year of the book club, and I'm very happy that we can continue on.
I would also add from what Fab just said that I hope that other girls right now who might be watching know that they have the capacity to be able to start something like this in their own communities. If you have any books laying around, you're gathering with your friends and starting this, you don't have to be a so-called adult. You don't have to have any kind of expertise to be able to gather with the girls within your community and start a book club. And I hope that other girls globally see this and see that it is possible for us to make a space for us by us, which is what the Black Girls Gather, a book club, is doing.
You guys all said it so beautifully. But I think the most both comforting and empowering thing for me has been just seeing how in a group of Black girls and Black women, we can have, I guess, this in culture, the book club, but we can also be so different, and we can have such varied interests and have such different personalities and still, I guess, mesh together and have this sisterhood and this inexplicable bond of just being together. And I guess it shows me that really, if I wanted to, I could do anything. I could do like Fab and become a politician. I could do like Sam and start a whole nonprofit organization. I could be like Joe and do a million amazing things. So it's like so many role models around me and peers that are doing great things. And when we look at the girls, it inspires them so much. Just in the last week, we heard from so many of them that either they were starting like initiatives at school, like doing a BIPOC section in their library at school, or they were starting a little business at school of like knitting, and they donated some of the proceeds to the book club. Or some of them, like one of my cousins, she's on the book club and she has her whole baking business that she started. And it's like all these qualities, like I'm sure they had them already in them, but the fact that they were able to see I guess other Black girls or Black women have that same drive and have that same ambition and take the risk of starting an initiative and doing something when no one else was doing it around them. I think that really shows them that like there's no limits to what they can do.
Awesome, ladies. Well, that's it, everybody. As you can see, Black Girls Gather, that is what we do. It's empowering. It is sharing our joy, sharing our hopes, but mainly developing our skills and developing a very neat network. Thank you, and be on the lookout for more from WIPCA and Black Girls Gather. You have our socials. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and visit our website. Thank you for joining us today, and have a good day. Bye-bye. Thank you.